I don't buy Campbell's products barely anymore. It's so healthy. Now that I know what the in it, even in a can of soup, I look at it, look at meat, bioengineered meat. I don't want to eat a
Footage of Campbell's Soup VP admitting unhealthy production of food goes viral. A leaked recording of a Campbell's executive mocking the company's soup went viral in minutes. He sat in a restaurant, unaware he was being taped, calling the products shachi tea for poor people, and mentioning bioengineered meat and 3D printed chicken. His role as a vice president amplified the outrage instantly. The video was first obtained by a local news station in Detroit. They aired a small segment, expecting a normal corporate story. Within hours, the clip moved to TikTok, Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube. Commentary channels cut the most shocking lines and posted them with captions that pulled in millions of views. Consumer awareness pages, health channels, and food safety accounts began dissecting every second of the footage. It reached people who had never watched Campbell's story in their lives. Each repost carried a sense of disbelief, the idea that a senior executive casually mocked customers and admitted alarming details about the company's food quality pushed the story into a national conversation. This happened in a country where more than 36% of American households buy canned soup every week. Campbell's controls nearly 60% of the entire United States soup market. Over 218 million Americans consume ready-made processed foods every single month. These numbers created a different kind of urgency around the clip. Millions of people realized the comments came from an executive overseeing a brand they rely on for cheap meals, quick lunches, storm season storage, and late-night convenience. That is why public distrust surged almost instantly. The timing also made the clip more explosive. Campbell's had already faced contamination alerts involving wood fragments in frozen soups and under processed batches of chunky cans. People were already uneasy. This leak poured fuel on the fire. It created a wave of discussion about canned food safety, corporate honesty, and the health consequences tied to low-cost packaged meals. At the center of the story stood the whistleblower. His name is Robert Garza, a former security analyst for Campbell Soup Company from Monroe. He worked remotely, did his job quietly, and had no disciplinary record. He believed he was going to meet the vice president to talk about his salary. When the meeting location turned out to be a restaurant instead of the office, he felt something was off. Still, he sat down, expecting a routine conversation about pay and responsibility. What he ended up recording was an hour-long rant that he later described as pure disgust. He said it felt shocking to hear an executive tear into the company's own food with such hostility. According to Garza, the VP arrived with no filter. He talked about customers in a mocking tone. He bragged about coming to work high. He made racist remarks. He insulted employees. And in the middle of all of it, he started explaining why he barely eats Campbell's products. He said that once he learned what goes into the cans, he stopped consuming them himself. Garza listened for an hour, becoming more uncomfortable with each line. He eventually took the recording to his direct supervisor in January. He kept the recording himself because he felt it might be the only proof he had. Garza's account says nobody at Campbell's followed up. Months passed with silence. Then he was fired. No explanation. No meeting to discuss the report. Nothing. After losing his job, he spent 10 months looking for another position. That period drained him financially and mentally, and he eventually filed a lawsuit claiming retaliation, wrongful termination, and a corporate cover-up. His experience reflects something many Americans face. The country sees more than 42,000 workplace retaliation complaints each year. Whistleblowers lose an average of 25% of their future earnings after speaking up against a powerful employer. Most of them never work in their field again. Garza's story fit that pattern. He tried to follow internal channels. He trusted the system. The system shut him out. The content of the VP's rant hit viewers harder than the scandal itself. Hearing an executive say he avoids his own company's soup changed the tone of the entire story. He said he hardly buys Campbell's products anymore because once you learn what is inside them, you lose the appetite to consume them. He talked about bioengineered ingredients in the meat. He described chicken that did not come from a farm but from a form of laboratory production. He spoke about protein reconstruction methods that sounded disturbing to people who always imagined their soup ingredients coming from traditional suppliers. His words fed directly into a growing national fear about ultra-processed foods. Studies show these foods are linked to obesity, metabolic disorders, and high blood pressure. A major BMJ analysis found that long-term consumption of ultra-processed foods can increase all-cause mortality by 62%. These statistics already made people uneasy. Hearing an insider echo their fears in such blunt terms gave those concerns new weight. A market analysis performed in 2024 added another layer to the public reaction. It reported that over 70% of Campbell's products contain bioengineered ingredients in some form. These include genetically modified corn derivatives, modified soy, emulsifiers and stabilizers used to stretch ingredients and preserve texture. The VP's comment about food engineered for poor people suddenly felt less like an insult and more like a window into the way food corporations operate. Scientific context also played a role in shaping public opinion. The FDA allows foods containing genetically modified ingredients to be labeled as bioengineered. Lab-grown meat is not widely approved yet, although the technology for meat extenders, reshaped proteins, and laboratory-derived additives already exists in industrial manufacturing. People who watched the clip did not see a scientific explanation. They only heard a corporate leader laugh about the idea that the chicken in their soup might come from something that does not resemble a farm. Consumer trust in processed food companies has fallen by 14% from 2019 to 2024. This clip accelerated that trend because it added a human voice to people's worst suspicions. It created the sense that corners are being cut, that low-cost ingredients come from questionable sources, and that executives know exactly what they are feeding customers who have few alternatives. By the time the clip finished its viral climb, it created more than a scandal. It shaped a story about class, health, dignity, and the quiet power large corporations hold over everyday food choices. It showed how easily an internal truth can slip into public view and change the national conversation in a single moment. The official response from Campbell Soup Company arrived in a short written statement that felt strangely empty compared to the size of the scandal unfolding online. The company said, "If accurate, these comments do not reflect our values." Those words were meant to calm the situation, yet they created the opposite effect. Viewers expected accountability. They expected clarity. Instead, the statement raised new questions because it did not confirm whether the recording was authentic, whether the executive was suspended, or whether any investigation had already begun behind closed doors. Critics immediately called the statement vague and evasive. It sounded like a line drafted under legal supervision rather than a message directed toward the millions of people who watched the recording in disbelief. The public was waiting for firm action. Instead, they were given a conditional sentence that left everything unsettled. Social media picked up on that silence. People began posting comments about corporate dishonesty and the lack of transparency that seems to appear whenever a powerful company is caught in an uncomfortable moment. The absence of information about disciplinary action became one of the most talked about parts of the story. Viewers wanted to know if the vice president was fired, placed on leave, or still working. No answers came. That gap fueled suspicion. Users on TikTok and Twitter said the lack of consequences showed how corporations protect executives rather than consumers or employees. The story grew beyond Campbell's and became a symbol for the broader frustration people feel toward corporate food systems. Health commentators joined the discussion and reminded audiences that Campbell's had already dealt with several safety incidents in recent years. They highlighted the wood fragment contamination found in Campbell's frozen soups. They brought up the under-processed, chunky cans that carried a risk of bacterial survival. They pointed out that trust in Campbell's was already falling even before the viral tape. With that history in mind, the comments in the recording felt heavier. This was no longer one executive having a bad day. For many viewers, it felt like a window into a larger problem. Influencers and analysts framed the event as evidence that corporations often place profit above safety. They compared the situation to past scandals involving Tyson, Nestle, and Kraft, where cutting costs and using cheaper ingredients sparked major backlash. Comment sections filled with people saying they were done with canned soup entirely. Others shared stories about switching to homemade meals, farmers market produce, or local brands that feel more transparent. The numbers reflected this growing distrust. In the week after the clip went viral, Campbell's brand trust rating dropped by 11%. That type of decline rarely happens so quickly. Polls showed that over 48% of Americans now express concern about engineered ingredients inside canned foods. Food recall announcements across all brands have risen by 27% in the past 3 years, which only added more anxiety to the moment. People feel surrounded by products that carry hidden risks. This scandal pushed that worry into the spotlight with more force than usual. The viral tape did more than expose one executive. It revealed the hidden reality of processed food systems that shape the diets of millions of Americans. The conversation shifted from one man's rant to an examination of what people are actually eating every day. Ultra-processed foods make up 58% of the average American's daily calories. This means most meals come from boxes, cans, bags, or frozen packaging, rather than fresh sources. Lower-income neighborhoods experience this even more intensely. Studies show they consume 3 times more canned and packaged foods than higher-income communities. The VP's comments about soup being engineered for poor people suddenly felt accurate to some viewers. Not because companies say it out loud, but because the food landscape in America often follows income lines in a way that is impossible to ignore. Food companies tailor cheaper recipes to cut costs and meet demand in lower-income markets. This often involves bioengineered ingredients, filler materials, emulsifiers, and stabilizers that mimic the texture of real food without offering the same nutritional value. Many canned soups contain minimal whole ingredients. Instead, they rely on reconstructed proteins, thickening agents, and chemical blends designed for shelf stability rather than nourishment. Public health studies already link heavy consumption of canned, boxed, and bagged products to cancer risk, inflammation, and chronic digestive issues. When viewers heard a corporate executive joke about 3D printed chicken, it tapped into a fear that has been building for years. The story also revived discussions about food deserts, food inequality, and nutritional poverty. Nearly 16 million Americans live in areas where access to fresh food is extremely limited. Households in the lowest income bracket spend 40% more of their food budget on canned and boxed items because they are cheaper and easier to store. Processed food addiction affects 1 in 7 adults, according to national estimates, and many people cannot break the cycle because healthier options remain out of reach. This is the environment the VP's recording exploded into. His comments did not just insult customers. They exposed a class-based system that shapes what people eat, what they can afford, and what health outcomes they face in the long run. By the time the story reached its peak, the viral clip had become a reflection of 3 major questions facing the country. People wanted to know what they were actually eating when they opened a can of soup. They wanted to know how corporations treat workers who speak up about misconduct. They wanted to know whether any transparency exists inside the world of industrial food production. The scandal deepened the distrust already rising toward large food companies. It highlighted how whistleblowers often face serious personal consequences for exposing internal behavior. It pushed a national debate about the ethics of bioengineered ingredients and the need for clearer labeling laws. It showed how easily a viral video can pull hidden truths into public view and force a conversation that corporations try to avoid. Many consumers responded by turning to local produce, farmers markets, and scratch cooking. People began sharing recipes online for soup made from fresh ingredients, calling it their way of reclaiming control over what they eat. Some posted videos dumping their Campbell's cans into the trash as a symbolic protest. Brand experts warned that scandals like this rarely end when the news cycle moves on. Companies lose between 6 and 18% of their market share in the year following a major reputation crisis. Clean label food sales have tripled since 2016. Studies show that more than 72% of Americans distrust food corporations after major leaks or whistleblower revelations. Those numbers give weight to what the viral clip triggered. Subscribe, like and comment why you like this video for a chance to win a new Apple MacBook.